Assalamu alaikum class. We're continuing with our discussion on measurement of variables. This is lecture number 10. We're going to today specifically talk about scales for measuring the different variables. Last session we talked about basically why we need to measure, and we said that there are certain variables for which we can easily measure the responses, but for certain variables it's difficult to measure, and for that we need to operationalize those kind of variables. And we also talked about that how important it is, especially when these variables which are subjective, which are arbitrary, which are abstract, they need to be properly operationalized in order to measure them. Measure variables such as height, weight, salary, these are easily measurable, but variables such as attitude, satisfaction, loyalty, these are very abstract concepts and we need to be operationalized. We said operational definition is basically the step in which we try to convert the concept into its behavioral characteristics, try to convert the concept into dimensions, and from dimensions to elements, and then basically with all these elements what we try to do is that we try to attach questions addressing to these different elements. So against each concept we might have multiple dimensions, and the dimensions we might have multiple elements, and these elements basically are addressing the different aspects of that concept. One thing we did not talk about, which we're going to talk about today, is then once the questions have been asked, what is the kind of scale you use to get the response against. Fine, I mean we have put up the question, but we need to get the answers, and we need to get the answers on a scale against which we can do a comparison, or a scale which we can make some sense out of it. So today's discussion is basically going to be more about what are the different types of scales we might have, which we use against the different questions we've asked. So if a question simple as what is your salary, this scale is of specific nature. When you say how satisfied are you with your work, then it is using a different kind of a scale. So we are basically going to talk about scales today, and we said that because these scales help us measure the response of the respondent or the input of the respondent, we need to see what are different categories of scales are available. So we say the measurement is the process of assigning numbers or labels to objects, a person's states of nature or events. So measurement, if you look at, is basically the process of assigning numbers or labels to different objects, different events. So when we are saying we're measuring, we're basically trying to assign a certain number to it. We're assigning certain label to it, and we're assigning labels, numbers to certain objects, events, events like salary, objects like height, etc. So we basically trying to assign numbers to those values. So we try to do these assigning, and naturally needs to be done according to a set of rules. We need to define certain rules, because at the later stage, if we don't have a specific set of rules, we cannot compare the responses with each other. So we need to make sure we define certain rules which reflect qualities or quantities in whatever the scenario is. When we say we like certain thing or we dislike certain thing, again this is more of a quality, reflecting the quality of the response, whereas we're saying we have two t-shirts, or we have got so much money, these are on the quantitative type of response. And again there are rules we need to follow, and we need to answer according to those rules. So when we say measurement, which means that we basically are trying to use scales to measure a particular variable. And we said, and so the scales are set of symbols, as we said, symbols, numbers assigned by a rule. So scales basically, to synthesize the definition of scales, is that these are the numbers or symbols assigned to certain variables according to a certain set of rules. And there are 4 types of scales generally, which are the nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio scale. We are going to go in detail of these scales. Generally, we say nominal scale is simply the nominal is basically a scale which counts the number of objects basically belonging to different categories. So a nominal scale is generally tries to keep account of how many of the responses are in a particular category. On the other hand, our ordinal scale basically tries to position the object in some order. As the word ordinal states, we're trying to position the objects in a specific order. In the previous one, when we're saying nominal, we're trying to basically say that let's say how many students are in the first year, second year, third year, fourth year. So if let's say there are 4 years of schooling in the university, in the undergrad program, we say that if we want to know that how many students are in the first year, second year, third year, fourth year, in that case we're trying to count into different categories. The categories are basically the students in the first year, second year, third year. So this is the category, and we're trying to do a count on each of these categories. So a scale basically trying to do this is called a nominal scale. A scale which tries to basically determine a position of the objects in some order, meaning let's say which are the most smarter people in the university, the first year, second year, third year. So we need to order them. We will say, okay, the third year students are more smarter as compared to the second year, and second year students are more smarter than the first year, and the first year are more smarter than the fourth year students, which is usually not the case. It should not be. As we move along, we try to learn more. Our intellect level should have increased, but nevertheless, whatever the case is, if we are trying to see and trying to rank, or trying to order, bring some kind of order or position within our response, and trying to collect on that, we're trying to try to get a comparison as to which is first, which is second, which is third, which is fourth. If you're trying to do that, compare between the different categories which we had earlier defined. If you're trying to compare between these categories and trying to rank them, to order them, which are smarter, which are less smarter, which are more healthier, which are less healthier, then this kind of scaling is called ordinal scale. An example could be that we are trying to compare between pineapple, oranges, and apple. We're trying to compare between apples, oranges, and trying to see which are more juicier. So we're saying pineapples, apples. So we're trying to compare between the three which are, or among the three which are more juicier. So we might say that the pineapple are more juicier than the apples, but oranges are more juicier than the pineapple. So we're trying to rank, or we're trying to give an order as to which of these three are more, which is the most juicier, less juicier, and then the least juicier of the three different fruits. So we say that, let's say, apple is the pineapple is juicier than the apple, but oranges are juicier than the pineapple. So we know the least is the apple, the most juicier is the oranges. Or in the other case, you could say which is the most sweeter. So we could have a different ranking or order of that, and we might say that we might say that oranges are the pineapples are the most sweetest as compared to, then might be the apple, and then oranges might be the least. So oranges might be the least sweetest, apples are sweet, but the pineapples are the sweetest among the things. So we're here, if this is the kind of information we're trying to gather, then the scale we are using there is called an ordinal scale. An interval scale, on the other hand, gives us information on what extent one is juicier than the other. So there, in the previous scale, what we had was, we were saying one is better than the other, but how much better is the other? This is not available. The only way in the ordinal scale, this information is not available. As compared to an interval scale, this information can be achieved. That is, we can find out which is better, much better as compared to that. So an interval scale, if you want to know that, okay, let's say pineapple is juicier than apples, but to what extent, to how much better it is, and then as compared to, while comparing between pineapple and oranges, to what extent is that juicier than the oranges. So we basically are trying to see that among the, let's say, pineapple and oranges, to what extent they are more juicier as compared to oranges, or as compared to apples to pineapples. So the extent of the difference between the two is not seen, meaning we might rank between 1, 2, 3, that apples are least juicier, pineapple is juicier than the apple, but oranges are more juicier than the pineapple. We have categorized them, but the problem with this is that we don't know that what is the difference between how much juicier is oranges more than the pineapple as compared to the pineapple with the apple. So the extent of the difference between these two subgroups is not available. An interval scale, we can do that, and the third scale, if you want to know, so if you want to know the extent of the difference between the ranking, if we rank them, but we want to know the extent of difference, to what is the difference between the three different categories of fruits, then we would use an interval scale. On the other hand, ratio scale is, again, it's the most comprehensive scale. It has all the characteristics of the other scale. So whatever data is collected through a ratio scale, usually it can basically give all the information which a nominal scale gives, or an ordinal scale gives, or an interval scale gives. Ratio scale gives you all the kind of information which above 3 scales gives. Going detail into the nominal scale, we will look at some of the examples on that, and let's look at the definition. What it says is the nominal scales are used to classify the objects. So the basic objective of nominal scale is to group the objects into different categories, and against each category, basically you're trying to get the count of it. So let's say we want to if we have a variable which is called gender, or residence, state of residence, or the province of residence, the country, the ethnicity, these are all the examples of variables for which we need to categorize the data into some groups, such as country, we could have Pakistan, USA, England, or for gender we could have male or female. For state residence or province residence, we could have Punjab, Sindh, KPK, whatever these categories might be. But the general objective for this kind of variable is to categorize. So if the variable you're using needs to get the information and break it down into subgroups and subcategories, and then do a count on them, then the scale you're using there is called a nominal scale. Another interesting part about nominal scales is that nominal scales are usually mutually exclusive. So when we are saying that you belong to the first year or second year or third year or fourth year, which year you belong to, and as an undergrad program, you have one mutually exclusive answer to give. You will either say I'm in the first year, the second year, third year, fourth year, or if you say what is your country of birth, that will be either it's going to be Pakistan or USA or Canada, whatever. So basically you need, out of the different categories you might have, you will have forced to use, or you are basically pushed to say that you belong to one particular category. So those we need to make sure that the possible outputs, you belong to one particular category, one particular sub category, but also you want to make sure that what are the possible outputs are also, the answers are also listed in a way that all the possible choices are also listed, so the respondent can basically give the answer among one of these one of the subcategories. So whether the scales are collectively exhaustive, meaning that the answers, possible answers, also need to be made sure that all possible answers are considered. So a nominal scale has to be designed in such a way that all possible answers are obtained. If let's say you are trying to get the province of your domicile in Pakistan, then the possible choices we have are the 4 provinces we've got, and we want to make sure that the nominal scale has the option of picking one of them from the choices you have. So we want to make sure that all the possible answers are there. So this is what we mean by collectively exhaustive. So mutually exclusive meaning we don't have an overlapping category, meaning Sindh is a separate province, whereas Punjab is a separate province. On the other hand, if you are saying your domicile is from Sindh, you cannot tick the option as to your domicile is of KPK, which is not possible. So the possible choice answers is one of the many which you have, and the number of choices you have are mutually exclusive, that all the possible choices which are needed to answer are given. So you're not skipping one of the provinces when you say where is your domicile is from. You cannot just skip one particular, let's say Punjab, from that option, because that's where some of the people will be answering that their domicile is from there. So you want to make sure that the respondents' categories are mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive, meaning all possible choices are also listed down there. So a respondent can pick one of them, of course, and not all of them. One thing we need to make sure that the respondent, the answer has to be in one of the categories, not all of them. And so this is an example of what we call as a nominal scale. Okay, another example is that you might appear that the example of nominal scales could be, what is your class rank at CIIT? This is which class do you belong to, either it's a freshman, junior, sophomore, or senior. So you have to be in one of those, because generally your classification in a university is around 4. So this is one of the mutually exclusive. You either freshman or junior or sophomore or senior. You cannot be both of them. You cannot be something to do. You cannot lie here or here simultaneously. You have to pick either this or this. On the other hand, you want to make sure they are mutually exclusive, that all the possible choices you can answer from are listed here. Okay, so if this is, if we've understood what nominal scales is, we want to make sure also to understand that itself these numbers which we have assigned in the previous screen, if you look at that in the previous slide, this 1, 2, 3, 4 are basically, they don't mean anything, in a sense that these are just indication or labels, or the term here, freshmen, are labels basically. They're not the actual data. The actual data is when you tick an option, if you select an option. This is what it really is. To a computer, when you enter the data, it does not understand between a freshman or a sophomore, but generally it will try to tabulate. What we will try to tabulate is how many students are in the freshman let's say 3 have ticked here, 2 have ticked here, and 1 has ticked here, and 1 has ticked here. So you would say 3 are in the freshman year, 1 is in the sophomore year, 1 is in the junior year, and 2 are in the senior year. So to us, basically, to the analyst or to the researcher, these basically don't mean much, but basically the responses is what we are looking for, and we're trying to see which are these, how many are these responses against which category. So the numbers which we assigned, or letters we have signed, it does not really mean much. We could have just said 1, 2, 3, 4, or we could have said A, B, C, D. It does not matter much. What is important is the responses we give against A, B, C, D, or against 1, 2, 3, 4 options. So we are trying to give options against the different categories, and that's what is important for us. So basically what we try to do is we then evaluate that how many people answered against option A, option B, option C, option D, or option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4. So basically we are trying to see that where are they generally, how they are answering against which, and the sort of analysis we need to do, or which is done basically, are the sort of things, frequencies we can achieve, that how many have answered A, how many answered have B, C, D, how many percent are in the A category, how many percent are in the B category, how many percent are in the C or D category. So we can calculate the percentages, we can calculate the count, we can count them, or we can find out the modes of the respondent in for that particular questions. So this is the kind of statistic you can run under a nominal scale, because at the end of the day, that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that where our respondents' views are obtained after proposing them with certain question. So at the end, and then we need to do some kind of analysis on that. Generally, nominal scales will try to get information on personal level, personal information, such as your age, your salary, your gender, the department you're working for, the organizations you have worked before, how many organizations have you worked for. So generally, when you have some personal information on the personal nature, that's the type of scale you use there is of a nominal kind. So following is an example. So you can see that you could say your department where you're working, you could just take one of them, because these are all the possible choices. Sometimes you might include something called as others, in case the survey is given to a department which has these, and they might have some other type of department, so you can mention the department. Generally what will happen with this kind of cases, well, you're developing a questionnaire and you're trying to give the possible categories, list down the possible categories. You basically rely on the previous sort of information you have, such as what sort of departments in a manufacturing sector would have, but it is possible that you might have included all of them, but you might have missed one of them. So in case there is another kind of a department in the organization which does not fall among these, sometimes you can give an option there which later on, if the user actually specifies that department as, let's say it's mail department or something, mailing department or something like that, what you can do is then later on, while doing the analysis, you could say this is option A, option B, option C, D, E, F, and then you have another option G. So under option G, how many people have said they worked in the mail department? Let's say 4 here, 2 here, 5 here, and 2 here. So you can always have, again, statistics on as to how many are in this, how many are in these different departments. You can find out the percentages, how many belong into the production, how many belong to the sales, and so forth, and how many in the mail department. So Basically, again, this is generally used for getting personal information, and then basically the objective is to find out the frequencies, find out the percentages of the people who belong to certain categories which have been defined in the questions you have formulated or the scale you have defined. Ordinal scales, we said that these scales allow us for labeling or categorization as in nominal scales, but they also allow us for ranking as well. So one thing they do additional to selecting or categorizing the responses, it also allows us to rank them as well. What we mean by that is, let's say we want you to rate the vacation destination in terms of how you would like to visit from 1 to 5, with 1 the most preferred and the 5 the least preferred. So if you were given a choice as to which destination you would like to go for vacation, and they have listed down, let's say 5 of them, let's say Bermuda, Florida, Hawaii, Aspen, London. These are the 5 locations where they will be offering a vacation package. They would ask you, okay, what is your preference? So once you define your preference as 1 the most, and not only just what is your most, but then what is your second option, what is your third option, what is your fourth option, what is your fifth option. So it's giving you a little more information as to what it was in the nominal scale, where it was had some limited information. Here you're not just categorizing where you would like to go, but also you would like to categorize as which is your second option, or third option, or fourth option. Again, as I said, this gives us more information. This scale gives us more information, more or less of the attributes than the others, but no information on the degree. The issue is that, of course, it will provide you the difference between the different options you might have. So you are not just asked to select the place you want to go, but also provide the information as which is the second and third and fourth choice. Although it gives you a little more information as to which is your topmost choice, but which is second and third, which is generally, if this were a nominal scale, that would have not been there. So this information is there, but again, the ranking while you are doing here, here in between, if you said you preferred Florida as 1, Hawaii is number 2, Aspen as 3, and London as 4, and 5 is Bermuda, what basically is that you cannot find the extent of difference you have. You know that between 1 and 2, this is your first choice, but this is second. But how badly, how worse, what is the difference between them is not known. Similarly, between 2 and 3, what is the gap? How bad is, to what extent you will like to go to Hawaii and not go to Aspen? So the difference between them, how much, to what extent you prefer to go to Florida and as compared to Hawaii, or as compared to Aspen, as compared to London or Bermuda, that information is not there. Although it does give you that this is your first choice, second, third, fourth, fifth, but among these, which has more to your preference, which is your liking more, then that information is missing, and that information, as we said earlier, can be obtained from what we call as the interval scale, which we're going to talk about in a short while. So once we are able to, in the rank or ordinal scales, we are able to, among the categories, identify our choice, but also give the information as how would we place to be our second or third or fourth choice. But the issue with this is we cannot differentiate between the first and second and third. The extent of difference between them is not visible, it's not seen, and that's a problem with that particular scale. Other than that, the kind of statistics you can run is you can run frequencies, and you can run median and mode information on that, but you cannot you cannot generate means from this kind of information or this kind of scale. So ordinal scales is used to rank the preferences or the usage of various brands of product by the individuals, and the ranks order individuals and objects as per the example below. We say that we can rank them Okay, we can say, if that's what you want to know, you can rank between the information as to, let's say, how many computers you have in terms of in your organization. This information will give you the kind of preference you have in your organization. Let's say you have 5 Apple computers and 20 IBM computers. You can find there are more, the choice is more as compared to Apple computer. So ranking the following personal computer will give you the usage from 1, which is the most. If you're saying this is 1, this is the most used, this is the second most used, and this is the third most used. But if this information is not known, that how many IBMs are more than the Apple. So if you're asking to rank, that's the problem here. If you are asking to rank, you're just saying rank the most used computer, and then the second most, and the third most, and the fourth most. You are getting these rankings, but the issue is how much more IBMs are being used than IPL and Apples, and how many Apple computers are more used than the Compaq. That information is missing. And this is the issue with the ranking scale, because it basically will ask you to rank 1, 2, 3, rank the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. That's it. It will not get you more information than that. So you see, the problem with the scale is that you might not be able to get information as to what is the difference between the 2 or 3 or 4 different categories, the choices or the rank you have. Internal scales contains the information which the ordinal scale has, which is ranking, but with the added benefit of magnitude as well. So this is a much sophisticated scale. Interval scales gives us the opportunity to express more in terms of what we prefer and what we not prefer, and to how much we prefer. That information is usually achieved by this scale. The interval scale has equal distance between the point of scales, and these scales can contain 0 point, but they are subjective and not meaningful. Although the scale, you might find in some of these interval scales the value of 0 being used, but it is very subjective. It's not an absolute 0. And the typical example for this kind of scale is the temperature. Temperature is considered to be an interval scale, but the issue with that is it has it might have a 0 there, which might be subjective, because if you start comparing that data, that temperature with Fahrenheit, if you compare the centigrade scale with the Fahrenheit scale, the 0 degree is subjective. It's because it's based on what we consider as a scale, whereas in Fahrenheit 0 means 32. So the interval scale can have sometimes a 0 in them, but it will basically will mean different to different types of data. So if the data is being answered is in centigrades, then it is equivalent to a 32 degree Fahrenheit. The kind of statistics you can do in using the interval scales is you can generate mean, median, mode, as well as advanced statistical tests. Example for a scale is that on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 meaning you strongly agree and 1 meaning you strongly disagree, consider this statement: I believe my college education has prepared me well to begin my career. Now, if you can basically agree, strongly disagree, or strongly agree, depending on the statement where you want to take, or the stand you want to make against this, if you say that you agree that this statement is true, it is different from strongly agree, because there's a difference between agreeing and strongly agreeing, and again there is a difference between disagreeing and strongly disagreeing. So this is giving you more information. If I would just have asked that I believe my education has prepared me well to begin my career, if I have given you two options here, yes and no, and in that case you're just saying yes, but to how much yes, how much you agree, we don't know. Are you somewhat agreeing or you are strongly agreeing? If you say no, in the nominal scale this information is not there, whereas interval you can know that you strongly disagree or somewhat disagree. So you see the sensitivity of the scale. It gives you more, it's more close to getting your true feelings as compared to what a nominal scale would done. A nominal scale, if you take this, then it will just say yes, meaning you agree to the statement, but to what extent it's not there. So it can make a difference. If you are somewhat agreeing with that, it may mean something else. It means you have certain doubts, or you're sure, but maybe you're 50% or 60% sure. But here you might be maybe 90% sure. So a yes is not clear as to how much percent you are sure about the statement. But in a nominal scale, this information will be lost. Whereas in interval scale, this information is available, and you can differentiate between the preferences and the likeness and that kind of a thing. So you can see that with certain scales you have more refined output, and again certain scales are more suited to be used with certain types of data or variables. As we said, for personal information you would rather go for nominal scales as compared to feelings and individuals' perceptions and individuals' subjective feelings. You would use what we call as an interval scale, and you can see this is how we demonstrated the difference that you are able to obtain while using the nominal scale. And the third scale we said is called the ratio scale, which is the most comprehensive scale, has all the characteristics of other three scales with additional benefits of having an absolute zero, which is a meaningful zero starting point, such as we say for variables such as weight, we can have a zero weight, meaning there's no weight, or zero sales, or we might have zero age, which is not when we say no one's born, then it's zero. Here you have an absolute starting point, and then you basically move onwards from that point onwards. So a ratio scale gives you one thing, is that it allows you, so if you're giving weight, it could be 11.5, or it could be 96, or it could be 0 if you have no weight, which is while collecting some kind of data, you might come across certain situations like this. Or volume, this is where you will find that you might not have any sales. You might have in millions, in trillions, or 0. So this gives you, now the information you have is open. The extent of the information you can get is limitless. You can have different information, whereas in the interval scale, if you look at, the information you collect is limited to these scales you have defined and the choices you have defined, as compared to, although this information is more as compared to what we looked at as the nominal scale, which was limited. So the nominal scale is more limited as compared to the interval scale, but as compared to the ratio scale is more, interval scale is more limited to the ratio scale. So you, instead of getting weight as to your weight is 20 kilograms, 30 kilograms, 40 kilograms, you let the respondent answer on their own, which gives them the choice to give whatever from a 0 to 100, 200, whatever the key weight might be. So you give them the choice to give whatever answer they want to. So the options are more, and more finer data can be collected. Once you collect the data, if you want to categorize them, that's very easy. Let's say if you have sales of 100,000, 110,000, 120,000, so forth, you have different sales figures coming out. If you want to, this information can be again categorized, made into a category where you can define certain categories, sales between 100,000 to 110,000. So you can make a category out of that, and here you can say, okay, there are 4 companies which have this. Then you can have 111 to 120,000. You might have 10 companies in that area. So the point I'm trying to make here is, once you're able to collect data in the ratio scale, it's more powerful because it will allow you the freedom to answer, give an answer on your own, but this is not, but the kind of analysis you can do is a lot more, and even if you want to basically do a categorization, this could be broken down into subcategories, and the data could be again done an analysis on the category wise as well. So the more defined data you have, the possibility of getting all the possible statistics needed to be done much easier. The more choices available, and you can easily do that, as compared to if you're collecting data already is using a very simple scale, then the analysis will be limited. So what I'm trying to say here is, again, the ratio scale tends to be more powerful. It has the ability to do all the kind of analysis which is needed to be done by the previous other scales, such as interval, ranking, or rank, ordinal, or the nominal scale. So this scale provides us more information. Okay. We already talked about the temperature as being an example of interval scale, but we may want to make sure that zero, when we say the zero temperature, when we say what is the temperature of the room, 0 does not mean there's no temperature. 0 might mean that it is cold, and similarly very cold or nearly freezing. Similarly, but on the other hand, if you're trying to get the sales figure, 0 means no sales. On the other hand, temperature is a special case of an interval scale, which might have a 0 in them, but generally the ratio scales are the ones which have an absolute 0, meaning there is no value, or there is 0 value for that, and 0 means something. And it's absolute in sense. 0 means for anyone or any scenario, 0 means nothing, whereas compared to interval scale, you might find in the case of temperature, you might have a value as 0, but that is not absolute. That's subjective, because it depends on the scale you're using, the kind of tool you're using, as using the Fahrenheit or the centigrade temperature measuring unit. It might mean different. So again, ratio scales are usually used in organization research when exact numbers or on objectives are opposed to subjective factors needed. And if you can see that the example we have looked at, we looked at the sales figures. There we need to know exact figures as how much was the sales, what is your weight, what is the number of employees you've got. Now there, basically, if you need to see and obtain exact figures as what is your age, then the type of scale you need to use is ratio scale. But if you are basically trying to get some subjective feelings, again you cannot have for that. The ideal scale would be an interval scale, because we said that the subjective feelings need to be converted into some kind of an expressible adjectives, and we don't have an absolute measurement for that. So for that, the interval scale suits the most. And on the other hand, where you need precise information, then we usually go for ratio scales. Well, whereas feelings are concerned, of course, there is no precise measurement for that. Then we use interval scales for that. Let's look at an example here. Let's see, we need to indicate the number of children you have in each of the following categories. Now this is an example of what we call as a ratio scale, where we're trying to say we have got 2 here and 1 here. So we are leaving the option open here. We're not saying, it's not ranking scale here. The information we need to get is of a ratio nature. We need to get exact number of children you have over 6, exact number of children who are below 3, between 3 and 6, and above 12 and over. So this is an example of a good example of a ratio scale. On the other hand, how many retail outlets do you operate is again another example where you need to specify that 110, you've got 110, or maybe 20 or 5, whatever the case might be. You are not limiting the respondent. You're trying to get the respondent's input, whatever the input might be. But we need to also see that there is a possibility that you might say there is 0 here and there is a 0 here as well, meaning you don't have anyone between this category and this category, and you might have no retail outlets. So this is what a ratio scale is. Let's look at an example which is trying to compare these scales with each other. Let's take the case of that a researcher would like to know what is the percentage of people who like Pepsi, 7-Up, Coke, Mirinda. So if, let's say, the study is focused on these 4 soft drinks which the respondent would like to know, and would like to see that what is the percentage of people who prefer Pepsi, 7-Up, Coke and Mirinda, what is the percentage of these. So usually you will have what we call as we will have a question. We would say to choose the soft drink you want to order or you would like to order. So basically you out of the 4 soft drinks you can order, you need to pick one of them. Let's say this one, as compared to someone else who would have picked this one and someone else who would have picked this one. So basically what you try to do is try to see how many have ticked this. So let's say 2 people have ticked this and 4 people have ticked this. You can easily find out there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How many? 7 out of, so we have 2 out of 7 here, 1 out of 7 here, 3 out of 7 here, and 1 out of 7 here. So from based on that we can easily find out that which is the most preferred. I mean, we can find out the percentage of people who are using this, the percentage of people who are using this, the percentage of people who are using this, and percentage of people who are using this soft drink. The same example could be stated that where the researcher would like to know among the 4 soft drinks which they prefer the most, assigning 1 to the most and 4 to the least. So here you have the same choices, but then you have a choice of 1 giving to this, 2 to this, 3 to this, and 4 to this. This is your first observation. The second observation would be someone would say 1, 2, 4, and 5. 3 here. So this is someone else. So this is observation 1. This is observation number 2. And observation number 3. You can have a number of observations here, and more data here, and more data here, and more data here. So based on that, you can determine the one who the one who preferred the most. In this case, generally, the one, if one is if you say preferred the most, we're assigning 1 the most. if this is the criteria you defined, then generally the category or this drink which scores the least, which is 2 plus 1, in this case will be here for just these two observations is 3, whereas this is also 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 7. So according to this, these two are to be ranked first and these two be ranked as second, because the thing is we're trying to the lowest, the soft drink which accumulates the lowest score is the most preferred among the two observations here. But this we can need to do that over the other observations as well. So what we tend to do is we try to get different observations, try to get them to give your own preferences for each of these different choices you have, and rank them. And once you accumulate these ranks, the ones which have scored the lowest are the ones as far as the research is concerned is preferred the most, and the one which has scores the highest is the one which is preferred the second most. But again, what is the gap in between? This is not known. The only way you can know the gap between these two is if you devise what we call as an interval scale for that. So the same example, we say on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 meaning you strongly like and 1 meaning you strongly dislike, consider the statement I like or dislike the soft drink. So 1 meaning like, 1 meaning you strongly like, so you have strongly liking this product and strongly disliking this product. So if you strongly dislike this product, so now here I'm not just saying that this is what you like, but you can also tell that this is what you have. You can tell separately as to how much you dislike or like the product. So now you see there's more information in this as compared to the information we're giving here. Here we're just saying which is what I rank first, second, third, fourth. Here I'm not only giving that, I'm giving more information, because whatever I like first is naturally I'm going to take a strongly liking for that, and second could be maybe there could be somewhere you have dislikes as well. So this is giving more information. You're giving information on what you don't dislike as well, and even among the liking or the disliking, you know the difference. There will be the differences could be more easily measured, because you have for each you have a scale which is giving you more detail, not just that you like this one, but actually how much you like this one or how much dislike you compared to the other one. You like this one, but compared to the other, how much like or dislike you can do. So this scale basically gives you much more information. The fourth scale, as far as ratio is concerned, you can have a question which might be addressing that. The researcher would like to know how many Pepsi, Mirinda, etc. you have consumed in a month. This can be easily converted, but now you're limited. You're giving a specific figure as to what you consume. Now out of this you can easily tap into which is the best, most preferred, because you know the one you consume most is the one highest. This is the second, this is the third, so fourth. So now you're ranking it as well. So this ratio scale is giving you the ranking information as well, and it's giving you the distance as well. You see the difference between this, the first one and the second one. The first one and second one is the difference is about 15 more consumption, and between the second and the third it's just a difference of 1. So you get the point here. The ratio scale is more refined, and interval scale as compared to interval scale is more refined as compared to the nominal scale or the ordinal scales. More information is available, and that information can be used for our analysis purposes. So we quickly have a recap on the scales. We said the nominal scale splits data into groups, e.g. men, women. Ordinal scale rank data is some in an order, e.g. exercising for 20 minutes is good, for 30 minutes is better, for 40 minutes is best. So we are trying to, among the three different options, we're saying which is better, which is less, which is worse. For interval, we say set the data on a continuum, meaning very low to very high. This is an example of what we consider as an interval scale. where we are trying to look at on a continuum, and whereas the ratio scale starts with absolute 0 indicating the proportion, which is we can see the proportion, the difference between the proportion from 0 to 5, 5 to 10, or 5 to 15, or 5 to 20. The proportion can be easily seen the way we just demonstrated here. The proportions are easily seen on ratio scale, because this information is generally not as much evident in an interval scale. Okay, some of the scales we said we could be we might be using might have problems. One of the problems could be that your scale might not be balanced. You want to make sure that your scales are balanced. It has the proper options from the both side of the view. If you're trying to collect information on the feelings, you need to make sure that there are positive feelings and negative feelings as well. It's not just always that you have a positive feeling. So whatever the feelings you're getting, one thing is you need to make sure that it taps into the positive and negative feelings, but also you want to make sure that the scale you're using has sufficient anchors or sufficient scales to indicate, and a balanced scale, so that it gives you option of giving the information on both these sides appropriately. So let's have a look at that. How good a car is Honda? In this example, you have very bad, bad, neither good, good, or very good. This is an example of what we call a balanced scale. But if you give options like these, which have excellent, very good, good, fair, and poor, now here you basically is not balanced. You have more options here, whereas just one option here. This is not a balanced scale, whereas this one is nicely split into two feelings, which is from positive to from negative to positive, whereas this has less of that. So make sure, although even if you're trying to use an interval scale, it should be balanced. And another issue is that sometimes you want to you're forcing some people to give an answer, but it's better to have more options to that. Like, let's look at that if you're saying how good is a car Honda, again we're looking at this option where you have out of the 5 different choices, you have neither good or bad, bad, very bad, good or very bad. Here you have very bad, bad, neither good, good, very good, no option. You're giving and you don't know. Sometimes people are forced to pick one of them, especially in this case. If you have never used or never driven a Honda car, you might not have you might not be able to give an answer appropriately. So sometimes once you limit the respondent to the scales, what will happen is that they will either pick something which is not the true representation of their feelings. In this case, if they have never driven or never used a Honda car and never seen a Honda car, they would not be able to answer this, and they will either leave it blank or give something like this, which is not correct, which is different from when we say neither good nor bad. This is not the same as I don't know. So these are two different things. So we need to sometimes also have an option open so we don't want to force, so we want to make sure that unforced choices are also given. This is an example of a better scale here. Let's talk about some of what we call as some rating scales. Again, these scales are basically based on the 4 scales which I already discussed. The sub types, some of the examples are which we can look at. It's called a simple dichotomous scale. Again, looks like a nominal scale here. And in this scale we're trying to see is that I plan to purchase a laptop in 12 months. Now the choices you have are just 2, which is 1 yes or no. Similarly for gender, what is your gender? Again, the choice is male or female. So if that is the scenario where you have just 2 choices, dichotomous, between 1 and 2, you like or you want it or you not want it, basically yes or no. If there is just 2 choices, then this is again a category, a subtype of of a nominal scale, and this is termed as a dichotomous scale. Another one is called a multiple choice single response scale. In this one, you do have multiple choice to pick up from, and but basically they were asked you what newspaper do you read most often from financial news. So you're asked to pick one of them. So maybe this is what you want to, because you're saying what newspaper do you read most. So you're asked, you say West City Tribune or national newspaper, or maybe you can specify. So basically you're forcing, and you're saying you're trying to get a single response from the respondent. On the other hand, we have a multiple choice but multiple response. We can say, what source did you use when you were designing your new home? Please check all and apply, or that apply. So you're not just saying that this is the only way that online planning service was used. Maybe you've used a multiple of services. Maybe you've used a magazine, you've used an architect to plan your house, and use online planning services to do that. So here, this is again slightly a different scale to a nominal scale, but it's trying to get more than just one option, but multiple options, as compared to the previous example where you had to give just one example, one choice at all. But here you can pick up more than one as to what are the different ways, or what are the different sources you've used to design your home. So you are not limiting that which is the most used method of designing your house, which could be just one of them. You said you need to check all the possible, which are the different sources you have used for designing your new home. Likert scale, we have already looked at it. Again, it's similar to your interval scale. In this, basically, you're trying to get, again, the individual give their feelings about a certain issue. The internet is superior to traditional libraries for comprehensive research. You agree, you strongly agree, or you disagree, you strongly disagree, or neither agree or disagree. This is again an example of a Likert scale, a type of an interval scale. Another one is called the semantic differential. This is again interestingly a scale which we basically use what we call as a 7-point rating scale, which has bipolar adjectives. So it has two adjectives to it. Said instead of having some numbers in between or different feeling verbs in between, what you use is fast and slow, two adjectives, two opposite extreme adjectives, making sure and drawing a line in between and letting the individual, based on if he says it's neither fast nor slow, he will tick in between. If he says very fast, he will tick it somewhere here. If it's not fast but not very fast, he will tick it here. So you leave it to, rather using adjectives, specific adjectives, you basically use two polar adjectives to identify the feeling and let the respondent tick in between where he feels more comfortable. Numerical scales could be also used. Again, the same thing. We have again, instead of the verbal description, again you're trying to use extremely favorable to extremely unfavorable, but then in between you're trying to have in between numbers which will indicate the intensity here. So the attitude scale is similar to semantic, except that they use numbers. Here, instead of a line drawn here, you've given numbers to indicate that this is what you have done. This is slightly more in terms of the choice. This is the choice. It doesn't indicate the intensity. It is the choice. So instead of having lines here or simple tick marks here, what you have done is against each you have also given them assigned a symbol to it, which 3 means nothing in terms of value, but 3 means the choice you have. So you might choose this, you might choose this, you might choose this. It does not mean that 5 is anything as compared to that other. Staple scale here basically consists of a single adjective in the center and even numbers everywhere. So in case you don't have two extreme values, but basically you have a singular statement or singular adjective, such as technology leader. You want to find out if your company is a technology leader as compared to this you would say that if you say that it is considered of how far is it as far as the technology leader is concerned, you might say it's in the +6, or you might also say that it is behind in technology leadership. How many exciting products as far as your company is concerned and its product is concerned, you might rate it from +1 to -5, -5 to +5, indicating how good is your products are. Is it very exciting or not exciting at all? So this is one. Again, a reputation. Again, you want to see your company reputation could be very high to very low in terms of a -5. So these are again different types of scales. There are a few others you can find. Some are here, such as the graphic rating scale. Here you could use a graphical image to indicate that not just the words, but graphically it's sometimes useful. You can use a smiley face or a different kind of an image indicating the choice of an individual in a graphic way. So this is another way of indicating your likeness and your dislikeness of a particular variable. Okay, so what we have talked today so far is basically we looked at the different scales which can use to tap in to measure the variables we have, and we said that the variables previous to that we need to, some of the variables are easier to measure and sometimes they are difficult to measure. Based on the need, we can have 4 major categories of scales we can use to measure the variables, such as nominal, ordinal, interval and ratio scales. And we said that the ratio scale has the most complex information available. You can do all kind of different statistics on that. Analysis could be done as compared to our nominal scale, which has a more rudimentary level of information on which limited level of analysis could be done. We also said that there are different, for certain purposes, certain scales are more ideal, such as we said that in some cases nominal scales will be more suited where personal information is needed, whereas if the feelings are considered, interval scales are more suited for that, and for information which for which the respondent can basically choose from a 0 to any value, the ratio scale will be the most ideal one for that. So with this, today we conclude our session. The next session we will be further talk about once we basically develop our questions and the scales we have associated with those questions. We are basically need to see that if these questions and along with its scales have been able to properly measure what it's supposed to measure. So we're going to look at how good the instrument basically we have developed, which is a composition of your questions and the scales. So generally the questionnaire, which we usually term in research as an instrument, we want to find out how good that instrument is, and the composition of that instrument is generally the questions and the scales. But we know that the scales have been developed as from what we call as operational level of at the operational level. So you need to see if whatever the activities we have done so far in terms of developing our instrument for measuring users' response, we need to see see that how good that is. So this is what we're going to discuss in the next session. With this we conclude this session. Assalamu alaikum. Allah Hafiz.